documents here. Okay, so you might remember, except for Ms. Smith, I don't think you were with us at the time, but last year we put out the idea of being more purposeful with a 6th grade accelerated math course. Principals, the ones that I've talked to anyway, are really excited about this, even at our lowest performing schools. I know Dr. Frazier at Northside, which they're a K-6 school, but she's really excited about identifying some of her higher performing kids and giving them some accelerated opportunities. But it's a tricky thing to do. The bigger problem, though, is what we're trying to do in 7th grade right now and getting kids for Algebra 1 and 8th grade by doing 7th and 8th grade all in 1 year, which is by far an impossible task. So the goal is to try to take some of that load off by identifying kids coming into 6th grade who could possibly take Algebra in 8th grade, getting them into a class where they would receive most or all of 6th grade and some of 7th grade, thereby relieving some of the pressure off of those 7th grade accelerated classes the following year, where we would revamp that as per the 6th grade course. And my vision for that is that we would possibly have, I don't know, I'm just kind of throwing this out there, maybe as much as twice as many kids in that you normally have in your 8th grade algebra class. So if you're at a school where you have one 8th grade algebra class, which I know is, I think, just about everybody that's joined us in the meeting, then maybe, so let's say there's 25 kids in that class, we might be able to identify up to 50 6th graders, incoming 6th graders, who have the potential to possibly take algebra in 8th grade. And then, of course, along the way, throughout their 6th grade year and into their 7th grade year, it doesn't lock them into that. We can move them back into a regular class either during the 6th grade year or at least during their 7th grade year. And then I'm sure there's times even in the 7th grade accelerated course where kids are identified, toward the end of saying, this kid really doesn't need to take Algebra 1 in 8th grade. So I don't think that's anything out of the ordinary. I'm working with directors and about to start working with principals now on criteria for placement. But basically what I've done is I've met with directors so far, just sort of revive this idea. I really want to make this happen. Let's see if I can do that. So I just think it's important for us to identify these kids early. And I want to do this in every school that has 6th grade, even schools that don't currently have Algebra 1 in the 8th grade now. So like Ms. French at your school, I know there's no Algebra 1 in the 8th grade. So this would potentially create a pathway to have Algebra 1 at your campus in 2 years, 2 or 3 years, I guess. So that's kind of what I'm looking forward to with that. But again, I mentioned the purpose there. So this spring, I'll need to get some estimated numbers, and I'm going to try to overestimate as we get ready to purchase new textbooks for next year, because we'd have to have 7th grade materials for those 6th graders, and to make sure they have what they need. We would meet with a group of teachers, whoever might be interested, to map out a scope and sequence for the course and cover the material that we feel is most beneficial for those kids in 6th grade and most appropriate, and get into as much of the 7th grade as we can, and still be somewhat realistic with it. And then, again, like I already mentioned, the directors and principals are already starting to think about placement criteria. And then this summer, the principals would have to choose their staff and build the course rosters, and that would be based on that placement criteria. And then next spring, we would start to redevelop the 7th grade accelerated course, which some schools already are doing that. But like I said, what they're basically trying to do is teach 7th and 8th grade math in 1 year. And so we're asking way too much of those teachers, and I don't think anybody in that circumstance can benefit the kids as much as if we did it the other way, where we already had some background in 6th grade. So as of next year, then the 1920 school year, that whoever is teaching that accelerated 7th grade course would still have to do the same thing 1 more year. But then in 2020, 2021, we would be able to revamp that 7th grade accelerated course. And hopefully then the following year, those kids going into 8th grade algebra, where we already have it in place, would be even more prepared, further along, better prepared to take that course and do well with it. And then in other schools where we haven't traditionally had 8th grade algebra 1, by that time we hopefully would have at least a small group of students ready to take 8th grade algebra 1. And by that time, we would have addressed any staffing issues that need to be dealt with and so forth. So that's kind of where we are with that. Does anybody have some questions, comments, concerns, suggestions?
I think at Ridgewood, it would be difficult to get. We have 2 advanced sections of 6th grade.
Yeah.
I think converting both of those to accelerated would be difficult.
Okay.
If you're going for that 2-to-1 ratio.
Say that again.
The one eighth grade algebra.
Well, and it may be that you only do 1 class of accelerated.
Okay.
I'm not dictating anything on that. It's definitely going to come down to the principals, and I really hope that once they choose staff to teach that course, that they would talk to those teachers and try to, because really you guys are going to know better than anybody else what you tend to get from year to year and who realistically is a candidate for 8th grade Algebra 1. And understand too, I'm not a big pusher for Algebra 1 in the 8th grade. I mean, I certainly think some kids are capable of that. What I see it doing at some of our lower performing schools is putting them on an even playing field with the rest of our schools, giving them the opportunity to say, yeah, we offer 8th grade Algebra 1 at our school just like everyone else. And I also see long term with this benefiting our high schools to where, let's say Green Oaks, for instance, I'll just use them as an example. Let's say they've got now kids taking 8th grade Algebra 1, which they don't currently have. Then possibly in 6, 7, 8 years, they could even have 6 or 8 kids, 10 kids ready for a calculus class, or some sort of advanced math that they don't already have in place. So again, it's a big plan, but if we don't start with the 6th grade, you can't start those things just without really building it up over time. But again, no mandates on that, Mark, and that's a great point. So I'm not suggesting that you have to have double your number. I guess in my mind, you would want to be a little more lenient maybe with allowing kids into that class.
Agreed.
In the hopes that some of them will achieve, but again, knowing that if they don't, then let's put them in regular 7th grade math next year, and hopefully they haven't lost anything because of it. Great point, though. Anything else?
Roger.
Yes, ma'am.
It's Judy Tippett.
Yeah.
I came from a middle school program where we were like bottom of the barrel in Longview. And we started offering algebra as an 8th grade, and then it got so popular between pre-AP and GT that we went to algebra in the 7th grade. And by the time I retired, we had not only algebra in 7th grade, but we had geometry in the 8th grade.
Yeah.
And that's a huge boost for these kids that want to do dual credit.
Right.
Yeah, and that's something we can talk about down the road. We have 2 of our middle schools in the district that I know of who have a few geometry kids in the 8th grade. That's not something I would be pushing for really hard at first, but obviously if kids are ready for it, I've seen kids go through it and be fantastic when I was a teacher in the classroom and since. So I'm not going to discourage those things, but I'm also not one who just really forces those either and tries to get more kids in there than really need to be in there. So, but yeah, definitely something to think about. Good example. All right, anything else on that? There's going to be a little evaluation where you could put another comment, but I don't want to cut anybody off if you have some thoughts. And one of the questions in the evaluation is, would you be willing to teach this course? Would you really like to teach this course, or would you rather not teach this course? Because I want to get some feedback on that. And hopefully, in sending out the email tomorrow as a follow-up to this, I'll get some more feedback on that too as we plan. Okay, so if you have any other thoughts on that, please keep me abreast of what you're thinking. I need to hear that. The next thing I wanted to do was talk about our illustrative math decision. This is the biggest thing on my plate right now as far as decisions that are going to be have broad reach and impact. And again, one of those decisions that I just don't want to make in this office. I really need some feedback. I've gotten a lot of feedback. What scares me, though, is when I get all positive feedback and I'm not hearing any red flags or concerns, because I want to be able to address those things as much as possible. Let me run through where we are with that in case you've been a little bit out of the loop on it. And some of this information is brand new that I haven't shared with any teachers, but Open Up Resources, is what we're currently using. They are no longer going to be a certified provider of illustrative mathematics. Just found that out. I do know that Open Up will continue to distribute illustrative math. They will just not receive any updates from illustrative math. So what they have on their website right now, what I'm told is that's what they will have. Not to say that we could not use Open Up one more year, but I know a lot of the teachers who went to the Learn Zillion and then more recently this past week, the McGraw-Hill presentations are really clamoring for a digital platform where online assessments and assignments can be made, and more resources are available there. So anyway, let me run through those. So Open Up is still technically on the table, although it's not at top of the list right now as far as the feedback I'm getting. Learn Zillion, if you didn't get to go to that on January 7th. And by the way, all these are illustrative mathematics. When you open these books, you're going to see pretty much the same thing you're seeing right now. And that's the weird thing, because this is the first time I've ever been around where we've got 4 companies distributing the same curriculum. So it's just a different world that we live in now. The difference with Learn Zillion print material is that they would have 3 books per student instead of 9. And they do not provide color. Actually, I got them to give me a color quote, and it more than doubled the cost. Mm-hmm. So color copies from them for students is pretty much out of the question. And that disappointed a lot of teachers. Not that color is an absolute necessity, but I think we kind of got spoiled to it. And I know it's nice in some cases when those kids have that color in front of them on their desk, and you can say, do you see the green part right there? Sometimes it just helps sometimes with clarity. But that's the way they present. Now, what Learn Zillion does have is a very extensive digital platform. I think the English teachers at all of our middle schools already use Learn Zillion for their guidebooks and ELA. So there's some familiarity with that system. Learn Zillion was a company created by a principal who was spending millions and millions of dollars on curriculum, and his teachers weren't using it. And so when he retired from principal, he came up with this software or platforms, digital platforms, to help make curriculum that's already out there more teacher friendly. But with Kindle Hunt, they don't have material available. They sent me a sampler I received yesterday. It's not a really complete version of anything, but basically and they are certified, by the way. Learn Zillion and Kindle Hunt are certified by Illustrative, so that means they're receiving all the latest updates from Dr. McCullum and the Illustrative Math people. But they will not have a digital platform like Learn Zillion. They will basically be a mirror of Open Up. So they will have a digital platform basically like what you have now with those resources that you have available. Nothing with student rosters or anything like that. And their print material, they said they would be flexible in their print material. That they could do 9 books per student, or they could do 3 or whatever, and that theirs are in color, and their prices are comparable to what we have now. So that would be something we could do if we wanted to have print material like we have now. Kindle Hunt would probably be a good option just because they are an official certified distributor of illustrative math. Okay, and then what we found out almost exactly 2 weeks ago, McGraw-Hill released an announcement to the press that they are now an official certified distributor of illustrative mathematics. So I got on the phone that day, and within a week they came and last Thursday, I believe, they sent a couple people in, and I had about 25 teachers, I think, in the room, maybe. I had a couple administrators, and I think that everyone there was pretty overwhelmed with their presentation and what they're promising. Consumable textbooks that are perforated and hole punched. Again, what you would see when you open the book is what you see now: the student-facing task, the problem sets straight from illustrative math. They also made an interesting point that when you tear out their pages, like if you tear out a problem set for a student, it doesn't affect any other problem set or any other part of the book. So they formatted their books to make sure that tearing out pages doesn't require you to tag on a piece of the next section. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. Okay. And then they do have a comprehensive digital platform. They showed us samples of that, and the teachers that were there were very impressed. They didn't promise as much as Learn Zillion as far as automatic grading. Basically what they're doing is importing illustrative math assessments as is, and if you've given these or paid attention to those, you know that a lot of those items are not easily transferred to digital format and automatic grading. So, but they have tried to make a platform where it's easy to go in and grade those in the computer. We call it hand scoring. I think with Eagle and some other platforms we have with eDirect. Anyway, they're promising a lot of teacher friendliness, and they're very cost effective. They gave me a tentative quote, which was well below the other companies, and included the digital platform that would have your rosters automatically there, nightly uploads, and so forth. So that's where we are, and I wish I could give you more detail about this and have a nicer little flow chart mapped out, or a chart with comparisons. But that's really where we are, and except that we're needing to make a decision pretty quickly on this. The only other holdup is that McGraw-Hill and Kendall Hunt are having to go through state evaluative methods to get the Tier 1 status, which is kind of weird because they're just repackaging illustrative math. But just wanted you guys to know that that's a hold up on their end. I talked to our State Department person yesterday, Joe Cowell, and she has assured me that this will take place as quickly as possible so that we can actually officially purchase their material. So I'm going to unmute everyone right quick, and I would love to hear your thoughts, questions, concerns, opinions.
Mr. Vance, this is Brenda Smith. Since I'm the newbie on the block, I just have a couple of questions.
Sure.
When it says that it is linked to our student management system,
Right.
What exactly does that mean?
Our student management system is JCampus.
Okay.
So
Okay.
every time that, so let's say a student transfers into your classroom tomorrow, and your counselor or whoever enters that information into JCampus, that student's information would go in and do that. If they did that tomorrow, then tomorrow night at midnight, there would be an upload from JCampus into McGraw-Hill.
Okay.
Same thing with LearnZillion.
Okay.
Your roster should stay current as long as your school is inputting those student transfers in and out.
Okay. So his or her work done already in that particular illustrative math would follow him or her.
That question was asked of McGraw-Hill. I don't remember. I wasn't in all the LearnZillion meetings, so I don't know if that question was asked. I'm confident that it would be with both. McGraw-Hill said that they would assure that happened.
Okay.
If there were any online assignments or assessments given, that would follow that student.
Okay. Okay. I didn't see it listed on McGraw-Hill like it was the other
Right.
two. That was
Yeah, I just kind of threw this together quickly yesterday.
Okay. Okay.
So I didn't put everything on there. Good question.
Okay. Thank you.
Anyone else?
I guess I'd be a little bit concerned whether or not we can integrate it with Google Classroom, which is what we do a lot at our class in our school. I guess without seeing the actual digital platform, it's kind of hard to evaluate.
Right.
And able to see it. So.
Yeah, and as far as I know, Mark, we should still have access to OpenUp's online materials. I think we might lose access to their assessments.
Okay.
Because I think that comes with our contract. I think everything else, though, the problem sets, the student-facing tasks, the Blackline Masters, all that material would still be there. And I would be very surprised, since this is an open source curriculum, if McGraw-Hill didn't give us PDFs for the assessments as well.
Yeah.
So I don't think that would affect us too much, if at all.
Okay.
But a great thing to think about and make sure of before we finalize our decision. You know, the goal of their digital platform would be that you don't need Google anymore. But one of my hopes is that we spent a year working on this, and I don't want any teachers to have to throw any work out the window. And if you're comfortable with the way you have things set up, I don't want you to have to change that. I had a teacher ask about their teacher edition. They said, well, I don't want to get rid of my print copy of my teacher edition. I said, well, it should be fine to use it. There are a few updates coming in from what I'm told from Illustrative Math, but it shouldn't be any major changes. The flow should still be the same. The order should still be the same. Just what I'm told is just minor updates here and there.
The Google Classroom, at least at our school, is the type of thing where all of the classes are on Google Classroom.
Right.
From an administrative point of view, especially when a parent comes in, it's really nice to be able to say,
sure,
where all the classes are.
Yep.
As opposed to going this platform versus another platform.
Yeah, and so when we talk about having this digital platform, understand this is not a requirement. This is just a tool that we hope that if it helps, then use it. But I I don't make any mandates about, yeah, same with Springboard. Like we're using Springboard for high school now for 4 courses in high school. And, you know, I've got, I think it's probably almost half and half. I've got about half of our teachers who've never even cracked the digital platform at all. They've never logged in, and they're content to use the print materials. And a lot of them are using Google Classroom actually. So yeah, that's one of the things I'm looking for is flexibility, because I really don't want anyone to change anything unless they really want to.
Okay.
All right. Any other thoughts about illustrative math options? Okay. Well, I will move on then to the last couple things. So I pulled some of the feedback. This is pretty much all the feedback from January 7th from our collaborative meetings and from you know, the forms that we filled out and also the online evaluation. And just some things that I'll just put them in front of you, and happy to discuss any and hear some suggestions along these. You know, the need more technology. I think that's where a lot of people were clamoring for LearnZillion or McGraw-Hill because of having that digital platform. Training for working with struggling students. All I can say is amen, and it's in the works, and we're trying to figure out ways to do that. The state did announce yesterday, some of you may be familiar with the content leader and mentor training programs that they have. They are starting this summer what did they call it? I think it was something like a remediation content leader. In other words, basically this kind of training that someone in Caddo asked for on a very intensive level, where you would go for 9 full days of training to learn how to close some of these gaps. I'm actually seeing if I can get involved in that, because I really want to be a part of it myself. And I will keep you posted if there's any more information that comes out as to how people get involved. The only thing that I know in the past with Content Leader, we've paid for that through grant money, and our professional development department writes those grants, and they usually write in certain schools, you know, like so they might say, we want a sped math teacher from this school, and we want a 6th grade teacher from this one. And I don't know how those determinations are made, but that would be our only limitation is if it's paid with grant money and there are stipulations in the grant. But I hope to have at least 6 or 8, maybe 10 teachers go through that training. The main issue over and over is just time, that we don't have enough time to cover the material we're asked to teach. At least in the way we're asked to teach it. So that's something we're going to talk a lot about this spring and summer, and hopefully be able to come up with some solutions. I constantly get this about not having enough practice. So if you haven't noticed, right during the Christmas break, I think I got most of the interim and practice test items linked in our scope and sequence. Now they're linked by standard, so they might not always match the lesson that you're on or that they're next to. But for the most part, they should be close matches. And if you click on those links, it should take you straight to the item and that item alone. So it'll say PT number 7, so that would be practice test item number 7. Or it might say INT F2 number 3, so that would be interim form 2 number 3. And the only ones that I didn't put on there were the forms that we chose for this March interim test. And we may talk about putting those in there for next year. We'll just have to see where we go with that. But so using that, I cannot officially put out anything that is not approved by the state. So that was really the only place I could turn is there at Eagle to provide more practice. But I would say I've had a couple of teachers ask me about more practice, and when I question about specific lessons and go to those lessons, a lot of times those lessons are just really meant to be conceptual understanding lessons and not really meant to do a lot of procedural practice at that point. So just be aware of that.
One thing I would like to say is that not having enough practice, and again, I'm new to this. I picked it up in November. But what I'm finding my kids are needing is more fluency practice. Just to be able to do the math itself and then to apply it to the word problems and take the conceptual understanding a little bit higher from that. So I've been finding things on my own just for that, just for fluency practice, for them to practice the math involved, you know.
What I
So
would ask you to do is to look to those Eureka sprints first to see if you
I
can
did.
find one there. And if you can't find what you need there, then you do what you need
I
to
did.
do.
I did.
Support
And you guys have done a great job on keeping that scope and sequence up like that. I've gone to many of those links that's on there to find something like for a bell ringer.
Some teachers still unclear about your ability to choose additional support materials. So hopefully what I just said about that provides some clarity. Need more time for planning. Again, I think the digital platform could possibly help with that. I'm not sure. I wanted to throw this one in here because it caught my attention. Need to consider removing some of the fluff from the scope and sequence. My deal on the scope and sequence is I want it to be a tool that is helpful for teachers. And my concern is always getting too much in there and it just becomes overwhelming. But if there's something about that scope and sequence that needs to be changed in any way that would make your life better, easier, more productive for your kids, please send specific suggestions over to me. I'll work on that because I see that as a living document, always in need of some tweaking and modifying. And I know we can't please every teacher, but I do want it to be a good tool that's easy for teachers to turn to and use. Any other thoughts on what you see here?
If you can fulfill that last one, need longer class periods and smaller classes, we will move you right on up to superintendent position because
I don't want to do that because I don't want to be superintendent. But I will say this, the smaller classes is a little tougher issue. But we have had several schools this year, maybe not yours, but several schools this year who have come up with longer class periods for math and ELA. Now that gets ticky because now you're taking time from someone else.
Yep.
But they've done it because it's an instructional priority right now. So it's definitely something that our principals need to talk as a group about. So I'm going to pass that along to our directors so that they make sure that they consider that for the next school year. Again, I can't say this too loudly because my social studies and science colleagues are right next door. But we have had some schools this year. We have a school with 90-minute math classes right now. They've pulled that time from other places, unfortunately, but I think we're seeing some good things come out of that. I think we have one school that has 75-minute math classes. So now they're building remediation into that time, but I think that's kind of what most people would want anyway. So anyway, we're definitely something that is not out of the realm of looking at, but it's not an easy thing either. So, all right. Well, let's move to the last thing I had. So what I hear over and over when I'm out in schools and from administrators and from teachers that I am or we are behind with regard to pacing. It's very rare that I go into a school and see otherwise. Although now Miss French just dropped off. She is at CMCT and her schools are pretty close. And she's really been in the classrooms with the teachers and helping, and it's been cool to see that. But not, administrators are pulled so many different directions. But here's kind of what I've found out. I've sent this out to our principals in principal newsletter for the last 2 to 3 weeks, and I've probably communicated this with you guys too in some form or fashion. But the first thing I tell teachers in this is you have to stop and make a plan. You've got to back away for an hour or whatever. You got to carve out a little time to say, okay, let me look at the big picture here. Because I know where I see a lot of teachers, it's a day-to-day thing. It's like, oh, that didn't get where I wanted it to go today, so now I've got to spend an extra hour planning for tomorrow that I didn't intend on. But if we don't back away and look at the big picture, the time's not going to make itself up automatically. And then in doing that, and I'm not sure if this number is right here where I'm showing 30 to 39 days. 6th grade is the last group to test, I believe, out of middle school. Is that right? Mm-hmm. So, so I think that's probably right, about 30 to 39 days, depending on interruptions and interim testing and those kinds of things. You just got to say, that's how many days I have left, and this is how much material I have left. I got this many days, and I've got this much material. So what are my priorities? What is a non-negotiable that I must teach in this remaining time? And then, start abbreviating. And it is going to be a situation, as you mentioned earlier, Ms. Smith, I think you used the term fast track. None of us like the situation we're in. None of us like cutting corners. But at the same time, we want to do our kids the best job we can. And if you're 3-4 weeks behind, or even more, I've seen it in some cases, unfortunately, you're running the risk at this point of only exposing the kids to half the material. And that to me, that's not acceptable. So what can I do to expose them to as much of this material as possible? I know I'm not going to be able to teach to mastery as I would like in every category. And so that's why I was talking about identifying the priority things. For sixth grade, I think I even put in here most important units. So if we're looking at the second semester, I don't need to cut 6 and 7 any shorter than I absolutely have to. So what can I do to shore up where I am to this point and get to unit 6 and 7 with as much fidelity as possible? I think when I was planning this, I was going to go in and put top lessons from each of those units, and I might can follow up with that in the email. But that would be according to the illustrative math people. They send out, here are the top 2 lessons in this unit. So if you were going to go back and review unit 3, let's say, then you might have a starting point with that if you don't know that already.
That would be great.
So yeah, I will try to follow with that information in the email. And just know, I can't send out a cookie cutter strategy here. It's just a deal where I'm happy to come out and work with you, and the emphasis on work with you, because I can sit there and listen to look at where you are, where you need to be. But it's really going to be you making the decisions, and then I can hopefully guide you through that and at least be a sounding board. But I'm honest when I tell you that I don't trust anybody more than you to make these decisions. I'm happy to be there to help walk through it with you, but that's really about all I can offer. Whether we need to do a virtual meeting one-on-one or a phone call, or if I need to be there in person, whatever I can do, I'll work it out. I'll do everything I can to flip my calendar around and make it happen. And Amanda and other administrators, please know that if I can do that as a group with your teachers, I'll be happy to do that as well. So any thoughts, suggestions? Some of you who have already kind of looked at some ideas on abbreviating. By the way, I got to give Dr. Slater kudos, and I know he doesn't like me to give him kudos in public, but got to do that, because that 3rd or 4th sheet page in our scope and sequence where it has optional lessons and has all those notes, probably 95% of those notes are his, and a couple of them are mine or somebody else's that I just added or modified. But he went in and really did a lot of work this past summer in identifying, okay, where can I cut short some things and still do a good job with this material. So I want to shout out to him. But other thoughts, suggestions that just based on your own experiences so far?
I just get concerned. I'm going to try, from my point of view, I'm almost on schedule right now.
Wow.
I know 6 and 7 are incredibly important.
Yeah.
Anything you can do with 8. I feel like, unfortunately, the state kind of lets us down because the practice test we have doesn't have any of the statistics on it.
Right.
Unfortunately, I know, from the little when I'm proctoring, I say, oh, look, there's
a question. Yes.
There's questions on there. And so the nice thing, I think, if you have time and you can get through 6 and 7, and then the thing is, I don't think 8 relies a lot on going in sequence.
Right.
And so
it's true.
As much as you can, taking stuff out of 8, little bits, there's probably going to be something on the LEAP that's going to be, what is a statistical question? There's probably going to be something where you're building a histogram. If you can just hit little bits of that, I think that one is probably the least, I want to say, developmentally structured piece of mathematics.
Yeah, so back to what somebody mentioned earlier about bell ringers and trying to find items. That might be a good place to pull and just, and I know in an ideal world we want our bell ringer to sort of tie into today's lesson, but I'm not a real stickler on that. I don't think it's always necessary. Sometimes it could be a little closure if you could somehow carve out 5 minutes at the end of a class, say, hey, I'm going to throw this out here to you today. This is not something we've taught, but it's just something you might see on the test. Let's take a look at it and see if we can make some sense of it. Finding ways to throw some of those things in there, I think, is a great suggestion, Mark. I appreciate that. Mm-hmm. Okay, well, I really appreciate you guys being on live with me. I definitely cannot do this without having some of you on here to talk me through it. It wouldn't be near as effective for the other teachers who are going to hear it after the fact. So thank you so much for carving out the time for this, even if you're driving down the street. Judy, appreciate it.
Thank you.
Yeah. So I've got an evaluation on here. It's very short. There are 3 like multiple choice kind of multiple select questions. And then there are places for comments that are optional. But if you could just go very quickly into that evaluation, and you can either scan it with your phone, or I probably should share it with you via email quickly too. But I'll do that. And that way you can do this. And it'll also be included in the email tomorrow, which you guys will receive. So that's all I have for you today. If you kind of stew on this evening and you have some more thoughts, please contact me whichever way is best for you. And again, thanks for coming. I'll hang on here for a few more minutes if anybody has some lingering thoughts or questions. But again, thanks a lot. Look forward to seeing you guys very soon.